Welcome to Toxicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation. You ready? Skizzers?
No.
We will definitely keep that in the cut.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
You intro.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Toxicology, the greatest podcast in the known universe that happens to discuss mental health struggles, addiction, and recovery. But we talk about a lot of things. We talk about punk rock a lot.
Yeah.
I talk about skateboarding all the time.
Ice cream,
lots of music.
Yeah.
And just a general feel-good show.
Man, it feels like I haven't seen you forever. It's been, what?
It's only been like a week and a half.
Since last year?
Oh.
I haven't seen you since last year. 2023.
Yeah.
Woo.
2023. So as a child, what did you think 2023 was going to look like?
Oh man, Jetsons.
Yeah.
Rosie Robot, like
Same here.
being able to talk to people on screens on the walls, and I mean some of that stuff.
That's true. So that we do have that.
I also remember the Dick Tracy movie. They had the radio watch,
Which we have.
Yeah.
And it's not a radio, but it's a little bit more far advanced than that. Yeah. I thought there'd be a lot of, because when I'm a kid, we're going back to the 70s. So I thought there was going to be all shiny clothes.
Yeah.
People were going to be more upright and stiff. And it turns out that they're just more relaxed now. And,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to the future.
Speaking of more relaxed, so I was doing some reading last night. I'm trying to get away from social media as a wind down.
That's a good idea.
Like scrolling TikTok for an hour before I go to bed. I'm trying to get away from that, so I'm trying to read more books. I'm going to try to read 24 books this year. But I'm also trying to just read articles that are enriching, like actual news online, not clickbait stuff, not lists, not whatever. And I was reading an article about leadership.
Okay, who by?
It was in Forbes or something like that. But it was about emotional leadership, right? And one of the things they talked about is that, employees want to be able to feel their feelings at work. And, the leaders of tomorrow need to become comfortable with feelings and emotions and things like that in the workplace and learn to raise their emotional intelligence at work. Less of this like I'm the boss and kind of stuff. But one thing they talked about in this article was that the whole world, even though it may not seem like it short term here in the US in the last 2 years, the whole world is trending towards acceptance, forgiveness, rights for everybody, equality. You know what I mean? Like if you really look at it longitudinally, where were we in 1923 versus 2023? There is still progress happening, and it's all trending that way. So I don't know. You mentioned that we've gotten looser, and I was like, oh,
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Bettering yourself, trying to make healthier habits.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm trying to do some things. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do anything fun for New Year's?
I don't know if I'd call it fun. No, you know what? I went to a party in my neighborhood, which was what you would imagine a New Year's Eve party in the suburbs would be. Lots of, 30, 40 something folks getting pretty intoxicated, mostly alcohol, probably some other things happening that I wasn't aware of, but I assume.
But you probably were aware of. You have a radar for that.
Yeah, a little bit. And normally at this type of thing, like I'm toughing through it because, I'm with my wife, I'm with my sister-in-law, they're enjoying it, whatever. And I just kind of, I feel very awkward, right? Like sober guy, like, am I going to talk to these dudes about football or, whatever. But I pushed myself. I did two things different. One is as soon as I walked in, within the first 10 minutes, I had a goal of introducing myself to 5 people I didn't know, right? And I prepared some topics of conversation ahead of time that I could bring up. And I've discovered that music is actually a great way to connect with normal people too.
It really is.
Yeah. So like I walk in and I see these guys, they're having their little cocktail and, a lot of them were in like suits because it was New Year's. I'm like, I got nothing in common with this man. Right. But then I start talking about concerts and all of a sudden he's like, man, I saw Pantera in 92. And I'm like, oh, and it was very nice. And also the other thing I did is I tried to find an activity that I could engage in, like to connect other than drinking.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Pool table. I am not very good at pool.
Not going to pool?
But I actually found myself enjoying the evening. And when my wife was like, hey, let's go home, I was actually like, let me just finish this game of pool. And that's not normal for me.
Okay, good. Yeah. Look at you.
So, navigating in the normie world.
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable in social situations?
For the most part.
Okay.
When people get real sloppy is when I get,
Yeah, so I when out with Gabby and her parents, they'll be drinking, and I will say, once you guys hit that third glass of wine, it's no longer a shared experience, and I'm gonna find something else to do, unless it's like a holiday party.
That's what Dax Shepard talks about, our main rival. He talks about, when someone's to the point of the intoxication where he feels like they are no longer, that they're having a different experience than he is, that's when he kind of gets a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, it's a good, setting boundaries, knowing where I'm going to say, like, I'm not too comfortable right now here. It's not fun for me. Yeah. Like, I understand that you're having a great time, and I appreciate that, and I don't want to be the guy, like, who brings that down. So I'm just going to quietly go into another room or, whatever and have your fun.
Yeah.
But, for on New Year's, right before we went out, because we went to a really cool French
I saw pictures on Instagram.
Yeah. On the east side of town, and it was great. It was so much fun. There was
I was jealous of your New Year's. I was like, man, that would have been a super cool thing to go.
It was a lot of fun. It was great. But right before I left, there's been a friend of mine who's been kind of in and out of recovery lately, and I figure it's a good time. I try to on holidays like that. I try to call people who I think might be a little bit lonely or. Just not the most social people. Just say hi, Happy New Year. I'm thinking about you. He was one of them, and he didn't answer my text or my call, but then he FaceTimed me. And this guy was fucking spun.
Schnockered.
He was showing me, like, where he missed on his arm, IV use, and just, like, bruises all over, and just walking, you see that angle from camera down here, and it's just like hopping, and he's looking in every window, under the beds, all that stuff, and just, not there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, am I going to have to cancel my New Year's plans to, try to get this guy some help? And, luckily he calmed down towards the end, and then we've been talking ever since. So hopefully he's gonna find some help. But it was definitely a good reminder for myself, because I'm one of those people who still get attracted to the use of drugs. It's still, that might be a common misconception about people in recovery, that it's just like drugs disgust me, and like I don't like. That's what I did for the majority of my life.
Yeah,
like,
I never didn't love them.
I loved it, and like I could still drive by, like somebody nodding out on a bus bench and think like, oh, that guy's.
Listen, I was driving over here today, and for some reason I was listening to Sublime, the Secondhand Smoke album, because that's all the B-sides and the weird stuff. And there's this one song, and I had this very vivid memory of I remember driving to college, community college, smoking a little joint, listening to this one particular song, and I was like, man, that was a good moment. I was like, but the song is still good. I was like, I'm enjoying it just as much without the use of marijuana.
Right.
But yeah, I mean.
Definitely friendly reminder to myself that
one scene in Pulp Fiction.
That's a trigger for me. That is my
John Travolta when he's driving.
He nailed that. He nailed the way that it looks and feels, and I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but he was like, I don't know how to play this, So this guy is like, drink some tequila. I don't know if he was actually drinking the tequila because of the Scientology thing. I don't know if alcohol is, if they can or can't, but drink tequila and sit in a warm tub. That's what you're feeling when you do it. And that was his motivation for the scene.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Speaking of motivation, there's a word that rhymes with motivation. It's fermentation. And today's guest is a beautiful soul, beautiful spirit. He's got that vibe to him. But his life has been colored by fermentation almost since inception. I don't know about that.
Getting very meta.
But fermentation has impacted his life in both negative and positive ways. And he's nodding in the corner, so I nailed it on that intro.
Not nodding.
Yeah.
But nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without any further ado,
Here he is.
Ricardo. Woo!
Wow.
Oh, there he is. What an entrance. Now, am I tripping? Or did you play Lollapalooza one time?
Actually, I played Lollapalooza a couple times.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. At least 2. It may have been 3. Those days were a big blur.
Yeah.
Those days are a big blur.
Yeah.
But for sure 2. I played Lollapalooza.
Too.
Who did you play with?
A band called Lance Herbstrong.
Lance Herbstrong.
Yeah. That incidentally was based out of Austin. We played ACL several times. And
I've seen the name on lineups. I can't say I'm familiar with it. Like Afrobeat kind of stuff. No?
that was the Chicago Afrobeat Project.
There we go.
Play in.
There we go. I knew there was some Afrobeat stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lance Herbstrong is a fun band though. You can still find the stuff online. It's good party music. Even for us sober people.
Is it white boy reggae?
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't say so. No. We do like mashups of already existing songs that you already know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like two DJs, but with the live band flair of a live guitarist who was Peter DeStefano from Porno for Pyros.
Who is in he's in the program. He's sober.
Yeah. Peter's now 20-something years sober.
He's doing some work in treatment. Like he owns a treatment center in Costa Rica or something.
Probably. I wouldn't doubt that. I
met him at an addiction conference one time.
Yeah. Peter's like a homie of mine, a brother of mine, really good friend of mine.
What year Lollapaloozas were you playing?
This was in the 2011 through 13 time frame.
All right, so you were still out there at that point and living the backstage,
way out there.
Festival life,
way out there. Yeah, I was spending more time, backstage partying, getting high, getting wasted, getting loaded than actually going out to experience all the great other acts that were there. Or I'd be there, but I wasn't there.
Yeah,
right.
So I've seen a lot of some of what I would call the world's greatest bands that still exist today or that are now no longer.
Yeah.
That unfortunately I don't even really quite remember.
That reminds me. So like when I was in high school, they opened an arena in Laredo, Texas. It's a hockey arena. And it was the first venue that we had where like big bands could come to. Because it was all local scene, punk rock, pizza place kind of shows, right?
Yeah.
And the first concert they announced was Tool.
Oh.
And at the time, Tool was huge for me, right? They had, this would have been maybe 2001, 2002. I think they had just dropped the Lateralis album. And we went, and Meshuggah was opening for them. And I was super hyped for it. And I got so wasted during the opening act that I have literally zero memory of Tool performing. Yeah. And I remember the next day telling my friends, like, man, they didn't play 46 and 2. That was really disappointing. And one of my friends was like, bro, they played like a 15-minute extended version of that song.
You got on stage with your shirt off, and Maynard smacked you on the
Maynard punched you.
Yeah.
But there's so much you lose.
So
right?
so much
you lose.
So much. One of my first concerts, same kind of story, was Carlos Santana at South Padre Island.
Was this when he like had that big comeback with Smooth and the Supernatural?
Oh, no. Before that. I'm 45.
Yeah.
So this is plenty before that. This is early 90s, like 91 or something like that. And I was so wasted that you said this, we lost so much. Yeah. I lost not only the memory, but I lost my favorite Jane's Addiction shirt. I was so wasted, I thought it'd be a good idea that to throw my shirt at him. Like, here's my shirt. Like if I was some hot chick throwing in my bra. Here's my prized possession Jane's Addiction shirt, which now I wish I had.
Yeah.
Carlos Santana is sitting at home watching this and being like,
I remember, because I was up at the front, I remember him like, looking like, why is somebody throwing their shirt at me? Like moving out of the way from this sweaty.
Just to be clear,
shirt.
It wasn't like a bunch of people were throwing shirts. You were just one dude.
Yeah, because I remember like my world crashing when he was just kind of like dodged it and looked like, what the hell? Like
he didn't understand the sentimental value of the shirt.
I'm like, I'm offering you my Jane's Addiction shirt off my back.
That's
my
how,
sweaty
That's how
back.
People's cats feel when they bring them a dead bird and they're like, ugh.
Yeah, true.
I actually have a scar right here still from that night I had at that show. I had, like my best friend, like put that joint out on me.
Oh, man. Were you that guy?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I want to remember this forever. Yeah, I was into burning myself at that point. That was my burn phase. I have one there.
One thing that like stands out to me about you, Ricky, is that like I see you as like very much a person of light nowadays, but I've always known that you've had some, because like to me, like burning a joint, like that's some darkness. You know what I mean? Like that's not healthy human behavior in any way, shape, or form. But like that duality of like who I know you as and who I know you could be or were at one point is like, I think something that people don't really understand about recovery is that it's not just I'm the same person, but now I don't get high. It's kind of discovering who you really are or growing into who you were always meant to be or whatever. And I dig that.
And with my experience with Ricky, I met him, when I was still coming back and forth when I was living in Florida and you were working as the chef at Recovery Unplugged. And, we started getting along pretty good and kept in contact and then started talking out. Once you left Recovery Unplugged, you and I still talked quite a bit. And I didn't know until we met up that one day at the bagel place that you were actually in recovery. Like, 'cause I had no idea because I don't know him like you know him and had all these conversations with him. I just thought maybe he was a chef that Recovery Unplugged hired, and that's like, that's what recovery is supposed to look like. People are like, oh man, you don't look like an addict. You don't look like you're an alcoholic. And you're like, well, what do you think an alcoholic is supposed to look like? It's like, this is how it works. It's like you become a person that people like to be around, and assuming that you weren't that for quite some time.
Definitely
correct?
Not. Definitely not. Yeah, it's interesting that when I was, in my final days, we'll say the last 2 years, the people that had known me my whole life, that at one point up until then loved me like family, closest friends, at that point were like, if they saw me out and about, turn the other way, turn the aisle quickly in the grocery store, turn quick, he's coming, let's pretend we didn't see him, move. Those same people now ask me to watch their kids and sit their houses and give me the keys to their, whenever they leave town, they call me and ask me for advice now with their own problems or their own siblings or what have you. And it's like,
that has to be one of my favorite things about being in recovery. It's people who saw me at my absolute worst. Mm-hmm. And like you said, loved me and supported me and wanted the best for me, but just could not even bear to look at me.
Right. I love you from afar kind of thing.
Right. Very far. Like, bye. Yeah. And then now they're reaching out to you if they have a friend or a child or, a spouse or whatever it is who needs help and is like, I know you've been through it and come the other side. And like that always, like I get chills just thinking about that stuff. So
So let's unpack some stuff, man, Ricky. So
lay it all out.
So Jason mentioned Chicago. Are you originally from Chicago?
So I'm actually not originally from Chicago. I lived there for 10 years.
Yeah.
Chicago is a home to me. And I say a home because I also lived in Colorado for 10 years before Chicago. So Boulder, Colorado is also like Boulder, Denver scene is also an old home stomping grounds to me as well. I'm originally from South Texas, border town.
Where?
The Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had so many guests
The
on
Valley.
who are from the Valley, like McAllen, Harlingen, Corpus.
Bro, it all crosses the bridge right there.
You know I'm from Laredo.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so growing up in South Texas, you know,
Yep.
what kind of kid were you?
So I was actually, I got into music right at sixth grade, 12 years old, and I just like loved it. Drums got into the drums in the band, excelled, first chair, always, all state, all the competitions I pretty much won most. I say all, but almost all of them. So I won way more than I didn't.
So you can do all the snare drum tricks.
The snare
Oh, absolutely.
Who was the first drummer that you heard that you were like, this is what I want to do?
Neil Peart, Rush.
Really?
Yeah. And that's what sort of opened my ears to great drumming.
Yeah, where could this drumming go?
Yeah. And then, then I discovered John Bonham, Led Zeppelin, and the list goes on from there.
What's the drum from Led Zeppelin? Keith Moon? No,
John Bonham.
John Bonham.
Yeah.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Moon is the Who, yeah.
Dude, John Bonham, when you see, I don't think you can understand John Bonham's drumming without watching him. Like, it sounds great on record, but you watch him play and the physical. Oh, man.
Him and Ginger Baker, watching Ginger Baker play is just like.
But so, okay, so you're promising kid, you're playing some drums, means you can probably get into college, right? All that good stuff.
Yep. And also excelled in academics.
Yeah.
I always lived at least a double life, if not a triple.
Okay.
And maybe even quadruple. So I was the band nerd. I was, the band geek. I was the nerd in gifted and talented honor roll classes, straight A's.
That's what they used to refer to as emotionally handicapped. No, I'm just kidding.
I would literally, I got a joy out of coming straight home and doing my homework and like getting it done. Like literally I would come home, sit down, do all my homework because then I could enjoy the rest of the night.
Was it like a haha fuck you homework?
Kinda.
Done.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah. And I was good at it, so I enjoyed being good at it. And I also, so then at that same time period, 6th grade, my mom got sick with cancer. And that was like my world coming crashing down on me. She ended up making it through the first time, but that was where I really experienced the pain of wanting to, find escape.
Yeah.
So that was when
at that age, I mean, the mention of the word cancer.
Yeah. Oh, especially at that age, you're like, oh my God, my mom's going to die.
Yeah.
That's it. My mom's going to die like tomorrow or any day now.
Yeah.
She ended up lasting a few years, but the damage was done. The trauma for me was done enough to where I sought refuge in mostly alcohol and of course weed. Alcohol and weed were my two gateways.
Yeah.
And so that was my third life. So my first, was the band nerd, the band geek, the academic nerd, and then I also was a partier. So
3 different groups of people.
3 totally different groups of people.
Yeah.
You could have shot the Breakfast Club just by yourself.
Yeah. So that's kind of that was my sort of junior high and high school in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
I was able to, and I instantly, like in hindsight, I pretty much was an alcoholic right off the bat.
Yeah.
Definitely, obviously controlled. What do you call it? Functioning.
Right.
Alcoholic in the beginning. But I would get blackout drunk since back then.
So there's something to be said for people who can do that, who could move into these different groups of friendships. Because you could go to one, go to the other, and if you're missing from one because you're always moving around, nobody notices that much. Like, oh, Ricky's not coming around anymore. Maybe we should be worried about him. You're just a social butterfly. So it kind of gives a little bit of a buffer when you're going through something that you don't have people reaching out to you as they would if you just have this one core group of friends.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, in the morning I'd have band, and then I'd go to school all day, and then afterwards I'd go party.
Yep.
So it was like, there were designated times for my three different
Your
lives.
band friends think you're one person. The
Yep.
teachers think you're a different person. Your family sees a different person. Your party friends see a different person.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big, to me, it's like a big signifier of someone who's an addict versus someone who parties a lot. Is that almost like automatic need we seem to have to like compartmentalize and have a couple different masks that we put on.
Yeah.
And nobody can know the whole truth, because if they knew the whole truth, they'd know how fucked up I am.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Okay. So you make it through high school doing the double, triple life. Where did things go from there?
And I went to music school and decided pretty right off the bat that I didn't, I gave up on school, chose performing, and I chose partying. And then I rationalized it as I want to perform, not like teach in a classroom setting. So I don't need the degree.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start performing, which I did. And I became a full-time musician from that point for the next 15 years. So all of my 20s and then early to mid 30s. Yeah, that was the Lance Herbstrong days, was early to mid 30s. I became a professional touring musician.
And you were good at it.
I was really good at it. I have done a lot. I've done more than I would say most people who take on music full time will ever get to do. And there's a lot that will do and have done and continue to do way more. Yeah. But I definitely lived the rock star lifestyle. Got flown, first class and nice hotel rooms. And so I've done everything from tour in the 12-piece band in one 15-passenger van, hauling a trailer with 12 or 15 of us sharing 2 rooms in a Motel 6 to playing with the Lance Herbstrong days and we each getting our own like Four Seasons room with room
rolling in the black SUV and with the whole thing.
The runners that pick us up and take us wherever we want and stuff.
So from the music stuff, like what stands out as like one of the best memories, like proudest moments you had during the height of your music?
Man, there are so many, really, and I'm really blessed to say that. One night at an after party at Lollapalooza, that we were playing with Lance Herbstrong, Perry came up on stage with us and did a song.
I had to stop myself from asking you if you've ever met Perry for.
Oh yeah, many times.
He's
and
from Miami.
Got to play with him once. Yeah, cool.
So you got to play with Perry Farrell.
Well, yeah, because him and Peter. I mean.
Which, like, if there's a patron saint of the early 90s alternatives, it is.
Yeah.
Perry Farrell.
Absolutely. Remember, I gave my Jane's Addiction shirt to Carlos at 10.
Yeah, that was a sacrifice. Closest I've ever been to Perry Farrell was 2003. They had revived Lollapalooza as a touring thing. It was different.
Right.
Yeah. And it was Jane's Addiction, Audio Slave, Jurassic 5, and Queens of the Stone Age were kind of the big bands. And a friend of mine, it was just after I'd lost the first person in my life to an overdose. I was like 18, maybe 19 years old. And I had, instead of processing the loss, I got high.
Of course.
I got real high.
Absolutely.
And I remember going to see Audio Slave was performing. The White Stripes were supposed to be on that tour, but they had to drop for some reason. So Audio Slave out of nowhere busted out a cover of Seven Nation Army. And I had taught my friend who overdosed how to play that on the bass. That doom, 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 doom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there and I haven't cried about it. I haven't done nothing. All of a sudden I just hear that bass line come across.
Oh.
And Chris Cornell, I'm gonna fight them off. And I just lost my shit and ended up leaving midway through Jane's Addiction because I was so just like emotionally wrecked.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Perry Farrell, I mean, he was already probably in his 50s at that point, and he was still like a little ball of energy bouncing around.
He's the same way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was fortunate enough. There was a point in time, I'd say between like 1987 and 1989 when Jane's Addiction, because Perry Farrell is from Miami, so I believe they would probably come to town to see his family, and then the band would probably want to play because they were playing there. I probably saw them 6 or 7 times between 87 and 89. Like, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
So you're a successful musician. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that and just playing at another highlight was playing here in town at the Austin City Limits Music Festival around 11 or 12, a band called The Gangs. Do you remember them? Gangs? They were scheduled to play the 4:30 slot on the Honda stage, and their tour bus got ripped off.
Honda is the second tier stage. It's the second big stage.
Yeah. It's one of the big stages. Yeah.
I mean, Honda is Erykah Badu,
Yep.
Lizzo.
Okay. Nora Jones played before or after us. But so we got to play their slot because their tour bus got broken into and someone stole all their gear. They didn't have their gear, and something happened that they were just like, they couldn't make it. And so we got to play that slot.
What band was that with?
That was with Lance Herbstrong. Yeah. And that was my first time playing in front of I don't know, as far as the eyes can see.
Like a festival show.
Yeah, ACL at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Was it so many people that it wasn't even reality? It was just like, there's just this.
Yeah, it's people. Like probably 20 or 30,000.
What's cool about that Honda stage is that it faces a hill. So it almost makes like a natural amphitheater. So so I would imagine you could see the whole crowd. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It was beautiful. Yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah. That was definitely like pinch myself moment. Like it's happening.
That 4:30 slot, that's when shit starts to really happen.
And the good thing is that it was early enough in the day, and we got the notification like around like 12 in the afternoon, like noon. Like, can you make it to the site? Like ASAP. So I didn't have time yet to be all loaded.
Yeah.
So I was actually
present.
Yeah. I mean, I started drinking and I was pounding beers on stage and stuff like that. But that's another positive side about, pro, that I can actually remember it because I had, I wasn't to that point of being that wasted yet.
For sure.
In the day.
So what year is this?
That was 11 or 12.
2012.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when did things start to? So I mean, clearly your drinking was problematic from a very early age, but you functioned, right? Yeah. We talked about that. So when do you feel like things started to turn?
It was with the Lance Herbstrong group, and so all my life I've been, functioning alcoholic and progressively getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I always would say to myself, but at least, I never get fired from any of the bands. I was good enough that they always put up with me.
Yeah. Your inconvenience was outweighed by your musicianship.
So were you responsible enough to make practice, make gigs, do the recording, obligations, and then get fucked up afterwards?
No, I would get fucked up before and during, so being fucked up is kind of a relative, a relative term, because you could be fucked up and functioning, or you could be fucked up and not able to keep a beat. So one of the guitar player from the Chicago Afrobeat Project, David Glines, one time said to me, he goes, I don't know how you fucking do it. Last night we were playing in Portland or something, somewhere in Oregon. Oh no, it was in Colorado. And he goes, you were so fucked up. You couldn't, he's like, I watched you I was putting my cymbal on the cymbal stand. He's like, I watched you for like 5 minutes trying to put the wing nut, trying to put the cymbal on the stand, and you couldn't do it. I had to come and do it for you. He's like, and I don't know how you do it, because once it comes time to play, you can fucking play your ass off.
Especially that Afrobeat stuff seems to me like very precise drumming.
Yeah. I mean, well, any drumming is really, but it is for sure. So I had this ability to just still turn it on when it came time to. I couldn't maybe not be able to talk or walk.
You could
or
keep
see
time.
straight, but I could play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a blessing and a curse, I guess.
Right.
So, but then finally the end, like when shit got really out of control, and I was already on probation with Lance Herbstrong and had been literally put on probation.
Like, was Peter already sober at that point?
Oh yeah, Peter had been sober since
And he put up with
since
your
I
shit.
met him, and I met him when we started Lance Herbstrong in 2010.
Yeah.
Peter he's a different breed. He's a different breed. He loved, it didn't bother him.
Yeah.
It didn't bother him. He's a different breed.
Did
for
he
sure.
ever try and 12-step you?
Nope.
No.
No, he didn't.
Did he ever mention?
But once,
hey,
no, not even. He let me come to my own decision.
You have to get there on your own.
Yep.
Yeah.
And once I did, then
Then he was there. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it was getting.
So you're on probation with the band.
And of course, I fuck up again. I would. One of my MOs was I'd be so fucked up that I'd either miss a flight,
Or they wouldn't let you go.
or they wouldn't let me board the plane. And the first time it happened, it was ha 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 ha. Like, man, they didn't let him get on the plane, and he cussed out the attendant. Like, they emailed the management.
Yeah.
Like, the airlines emailed management the transcript
Really?
of
what
the altercation that took place at the counter. And it was a laughing matter. It was a laughing stock. Fucking Ricky, man. Like, this is hilarious. We still made the gig.
You don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
You don't know who I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, like, I can see. Like, one time is funny. It's a story. It's
But then the second time, it was like, and then third time, and now I'm missing the gig, or, having the band's having to pay exorbitant amount of money to, get me on the next flight.
Yeah.
And now it's like, now I'm a liability.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting fired from the band. And that's when my real downward spiral happened. Once I not only got fired from a band and got fired because it never really happened to me before, but from the greatest opportunity that I had ever come across, I totally fucked it up.
And you mentioned earlier, right? Your justification was always like, hey, you know what? Like, at least they keep me around.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It must not be that bad.
All of a sudden, that rug was pulled from underneath me.
And this is at your peak of what you wanted to do. This is,
The dream.
Yeah. So talk about like my ego just deflated. I was crushed. I went into severe depression, which of course, what am I going to treat that with? Yeah.
Little bironga?
Yeah. Bironga. And yeah. And
so are you strictly alcohol and weed at this point? Or are you?
No, I loved cocaine was my second drug of choice. Yeah. Alcohol, I couldn't live without. Cocaine, if I didn't have the money, well, I can still go get some cheap booze. But yeah, cocaine and alcohol was my bag.
So cocaine and alcohol, that's a perfect recipe to make a chef.
So I want to talk a little bit about, like, obviously you got sober, right?
Yep.
We talk about how people get sober all the time, right? And, but I want to talk about some of the stuff that's taken place, like, in your recovery journey.
Yes.
Some of the things that you found that have really, from the outside looking in, deepened your human experience, deepened your spiritual life, deepened your recovery, that aren't just, meetings and steps and that stuff.
So I'm glad we're getting to this point, because this is the point that I like to focus on. Because
let's go.
I like to focus on the now.
Yeah.
I'm making comfortable.
I'm not going to tell you any stories that you haven't heard, as far as like war stories and stuff like that. But the me now, we started touched on it a little bit earlier about the same people that would do a quick beeline the other way when they saw me are now the people that are asking me to house sit for them and even child sit and pet sit for them. I'm overcome with gratitude and on a daily level, on a daily basis, almost daily basis. I might go a day or two, but definitely more often than not, just by looking around me, even just being invited here to sit with you guys and talk, when I get into my car now, I have a car with the black leather seats and the moon roof, and it starts itself with a push of a button, and I'm not even have to be in it. It parks itself like the job that I have, the place that I live in, the opportunity.
Your record collection.
My record collection, my stereos.
Yeah.
I have one in my living room, one in my bedroom. If I had a bigger house, I'd have another one in the basement. And they're really nice. I'm into the classic hi-fi stereo systems. So, and not to get too caught up in the materialistic thing, because that's just material and that's external. And I recognize that.
But see, it's weird because sometimes I talk about stuff like that. It's like, that's the stuff I can point to, that I can show you, like, look, see that thing. Like, that's, but there's more, right?
There is. And it's, for me, it's rooted in gratitude.
Yeah.
It's rooted, like I get goosebumps talking about it. Because for most of my life until I got sober, and it's still there. We talked a little bit earlier in the very beginning about the darkness.
Yeah.
So I call that the shadow, right? I mean, a lot of people call that the shadow, and I like to refer to that as the shadow, and my shadow is still there. Yeah. The other night, and I was part of a men's group for many years, especially in early recovery, called the Mankind Project. Shout out to the Mankind Project.
Forgot about the Mankind Project.
And
Bob Bear and all those guys.
Yeah. And I owe a lot to them, especially in my early recovery, like to have been able to get to where I am now. But in that work, we talk about the shadow will always be there, and the important thing is to be in the driver's seat and be behind the shadow. As long as the shadow's in front of me, I can be behind the shadow and I can see the shadow. But once I let my shadow get behind me, then the shadow can take control of me. And every now and again, the shadow does. It happened just the other night. I was parking my car for a moment to unload some stuff in a no parking zone at my place, my apartment complex where I live. It's a pretty nice place. They're apartment homes, and I pay good money to live there. It's in a nice part of town. And I've been there for 3 years. I'm giving you a little backstory, right? And there's a new maintenance guy.
Those sound like all the reasons why the rules don't apply to me.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a new maintenance guy, and I know he's new because I know all the maintenance guys who've been there. I've been there over 3 years now. And I parked the car to unload some stuff, and just temporarily right there in the no parking spot. And he just comes up to me, "Excuse me, sir, you can't park there." And man, it just triggered me. Something about that just triggered me, that he didn't say, "Oh, hello. Hey, sir, how you doing? Happy New Year."
He just came
I'm sure you probably live here, but just so you know, like, he skipped all of that and came at me with a raised voice, and I was just not. And I go to yoga on a regular basis, like I'm in recovery. And for past all of that, my shadow took over.
Yeah.
And I just started cursing him out. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? Do you know who I am? I actually said those words. So when you said that, and as they were coming out of my mouth, I was like, no, I just fucking said that. So I blew up at him in a way that that any time that I get to that level in anger and I let it take control over me, I instantly kind of like almost feel guilty, and it reminds me, it takes me back to where I used to live. Yeah. Because when I was in my active recovery, in my active addiction, I was always yelling and screaming and getting kicked out of places and
I was
throwing
gonna ask
tantrums
you,
like
yeah.
a little fucking child.
And I was going to ask you about that because I remember, when you were working for RU, you went and did some anger management stuff.
Yeah.
And I was curious, like, if that was a new thing you found while in recovery,
Yes.
like, or if it was something that came from before.
Yes. So I still deal with anger issues.
Yeah.
And
Is it short fuse anger or long fuse anger?
I would say short. Fuse. But that was really good. I actually ended up getting a 3-day suspension from like my first good job in recovery. And that was really eye-opening to me because I was being short-tempered and enough of the clients had complained that, man, I'm kind of like walking on eggshells around this guy. So that enabled me. And luckily, by the grace of God and myself to have the awareness, I was like, okay, I need to do something here because I'm on a 3-day suspension and this is like skating on thin ice. So that's when I chose to take that anger management class. I still have that
the
certification framed and hanging in my place.
And I want to share something with you so that like you don't feel like alone in that. Is like, I'm 14 and a half years sober. Like, like I threw a lamp a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. That I don't feel so alone.
But I didn't know really. Like,
We're still normal, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
still people. Like we're still human beings.
Yeah. And and I say that because one of the things I realized about myself is that like I fall into that social media trap of like, I want to show people the good things, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes it makes people think that like, I've got my shit together. Like, Joseph ain't got no problems. But you know what? People don't connect with that perfect thing. People connect with the blemishes, with the pimples, with the warts, with the like, hey,
The lamp.
I threw a lamp across it,
I had a therapist soon after that point. I had a therapist at one point where I had another little isolated incident and I had lost my temper. I don't even remember what the specifics were about it again, but it was about the same severity as this last one that I just told you about that was just this past week. So it's still heavy on my mind. I'm still working up the courage, mustering up the courage to make amends with him.
Go talk to him. Yeah.
So this is good that we're talking about it here. But so I went to my therapist, at our next session after that last one, that one had happened. And I was like, so beating myself about it. And he goes, Ricardo, when was the last time you blew up like this? Like, when was the last time you done this? I had to think about it and scratch my head. I was like, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Something, maybe. Like, I had to think about it. And he was like, but back when you were using, how often did this happen? Oh, I don't even think he had to say that. But that was all he had to ask was, and I had to even think about it. Yeah. And then, it was just a beautiful moment. He was just like,
what's that?
I'd say you're doing pretty good.
I mean, progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Progress, not perfection.
Well, it's great that you're doing work on yourself continuously.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of recovery is that it doesn't stop here. We haven't come this far to only come this far. Yeah. So what does your life look like today?
So today I am the executive sous chef at Sammy's Italian.
That sounds
really
fancy.
Nice, upscale Italian restaurant in town.
Could you wear one of the tall hats if you wanted to? Like,
well, I mean, that's a whole nother. I'd have to work in a French restaurant. That's a French thing.
Oh, okay.
And if I studied under a French chef and worked in a French restaurant, of course I could. Yeah.
Okay. But so you're the executive sous chef.
I'm the executive sous. Yeah. Which is pretty big deal for a pretty big company. It's the same company, MML Hospitality is the group that owns Jeffrey's, Clark's, Perla's, really Josephine House.
Oh, I love Joseph.
Yeah. So that's the restaurant group. So all the restaurants that we do are, pretty up there.
Yeah.
Top notch.
They don't fuck around.
Yeah. We're definitely a high level restaurant. And so to have an executive level position in a place like that, is also just another one of the many things that I pinch myself and, give thanks for and wake up for in gratitude these days. Like, look at where I am, and it's not even where I've come, but, I know that I'm still on a path and on a trajectory. So there's that. I have, a year and a half ago, at the pandemic, I started doing kombucha and bread and selling it on Instagram and Facebook through friends. And I eventually
You taught me over the phone how to make bread.
That's right. And I ended up starting a business, Love Culture Kombucha.
Delicious
actual
stuff.
LLC. Thank you. And I have a little sticker here.
We could zoom in on that.
Yeah. And it's been awesome. I've learned so much. It's been a year and a half, I think. Yeah, as an actual LLC. I'm in about 12 stores, and my goal in opening it was to create work jobs for other people while producing a healthy, organic drink that's good for the gut and healthy, right? A healthy fermented drink, as opposed to the ones I used to drink. And a year and a half later, fast forward a year and a half later, while still maintaining, my day job, which really pays the bills, I haven't been able to get there with Love Culture Kombucha. And long story short, it's just a lot of expense in the bottling and the packaging. So I am actually going to pull the plug on it. And people usually go, "Oh man, I'm so sorry." And I get that, and I appreciate that. But it's actually not a sad thing. I mean, of course, yes, there's some sadness. I'm not going to say I'm not sad about it in any way. But at the end of the day, it's what I've learned. And I've never started an LLC before this. I never started and created a business with like an actual business with insurance and where I pay rent in a space and
All this stuff, yeah.
I didn't get to the employee level. That was the first goal. But all that I learned and am going to take away from this is tremendous. So it's a win. It's a victory. And, plus, what do they always say? All the people who start businesses, very few ever make it on their first one. So it's my first one.
Fail,
yeah.
Can't wait to see what the next one
my first one.
One last thing I want to touch on real quick before we run out of time is I do want to talk a little bit about, I know yoga's been real big in your recovery on your path. So maybe just talk a little bit about like how you first started, what it's done for you.
Yeah. So when I was in treatment, I was out at, shout out to Austin Recovery, the ranch in Buda.
ARC.
Yeah. And once a week they would have someone come out and do yoga. So it was a total voluntary thing. You could go if you wanted or you didn't have to. So for me, it was sort of like, hey, I'm going to get out of this classroom group setting treatment and just go and pretend like I care about this thing. But it was amazing. It was really hard. I was at that point, I was 235 pounds. Oh, and so I couldn't hardly bend over to touch to put my shoes on I would break a sweat to tie my shoelaces. So once I actually started trying the postures, I was like, wow, this is actually challenging. And so I started to enjoy the challenge. So I looked forward, in the 4 weeks that I was in treatment, I looked forward to that one. It was on Tuesdays. I still remember. I looked forward to Tuesday because I would get to take class with Teddy or Monica from Pure Yoga, Texas. And which I later ended up going out to treatment centers and taking yoga to treatment centers as well, to people at the centers. But so once I got out of treatment, Pure Yoga Texas offered me like, a 1 month, scholarship, to go and actually go practice at the studio. And then, so that's when it really started. And for me, it was hot yoga. And something about like the heat and the sweat. And my very first class, just like I broke down in tears.
Yeah.
I think what triggered it was how difficult it was, but then it was also just a good way for me to release. And then I was hooked. And that sort of ended up becoming my substitute. Because remember, this is now just like 1 month sober.
Yeah.
So that became sort of like my next obsession. And I call it my healthy obsession. Yeah. And so, yeah, to this day, now 7 years sober, right? 7. I love that I can't even remember, or that I don't really count the days or the years anymore. I'm pretty sure it's 7 that I just turned in November. Yeah. So now 7 years later, yoga is still like my medicine. It's still, it provides an opportunity for not only breathing and meditation, but also some physical fitness.
Mind, body, spirit.
Yep.
Well, we are about out of time. So I think it's time for
Rapid fire question time.
It's rapid fire question time.
All right. First question. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle and why?
Oh, man. I'm just going to go with Leonardo because, come on, Leonardo. I like the name. My cousin, rest in peace, was named Leonardo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so chef life. You're, let's say, Mother's Day. Okay, busiest night in the restaurant.
Yes.
Huh? Yeah.
Your printer POS goes down. People are handwriting tickets.
Yep.
2 of your line cooks don't show up for work.
He knows what he's talking about.
Worst day you could imagine.
Right.
What do you make for yourself at the end of shift? What is your comfort food?
Probably like whatever cheeseburger and French fries that's still open at that point.
All right. This is a food question. I'll get another one. This one we do every show, and I'm excited to ask you this question. Ben and Jerry's comes to you and say, "Hey, Ricardo, we want to make a Ricardo Ben and Jerry's signature flavor, just like Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, all those guys.
Oh, dang.
What do you want to put in it, and what are we going to call it? But you got to tell us right now."
It's going to be salty. Salty, caramelly, chocolatey goodness.
And what would you call it?
Chocolatey, salty, caramelly goodness.
All right.
Time travel vacationing is a thing now. Where are you going? What period?
Ooh.
Where and what era?
Interesting. I would say to wherever Jimi Hendrix was in 1969. I know he was either in Seattle, or wasn't he in Seattle?
So
Seattle.
From, yeah.
So
can I offer something to you?
yeah.
There's this real famous story about how the Beatles dropped Sgt. Pepper, and like 2 days later they were at a Jimi Hendrix show and he played Sgt. Pepper.
Yes.
That show.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, you guys get vacation
that
together.
Show. Yeah.
All right. And then finally, before we wrap things up, the floor is yours, man. Whatever you want to leave the audience with, any message, anything you want to plug, it's all you, bud.
Yeah, man. It comes back to gratitude. Gratitude, remembering where I came from, my challenges, my struggles, my trials and tribulations. Making that decision to get sober, to get help. Yeah. I didn't even know what getting sober looked like yet, but to get the decision to say yes to getting help, which for me meant treatment. There was no other way for me. Once I made that decision to get sober and to go to treatment, everything else opened. Opportunities have been there, were always there for me in my life, but I couldn't see them, or I wouldn't see them, and I didn't know, I wasn't equipped with what I needed to allow those opportunities to come to fruition, or I would waste them. I would burn them. And so ever since that first decision to say yes to getting on a plane, to flying to Austin, for me, to getting treatment, to getting into help, everything just started.
Everything came from that.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, from that, it was one positive decision, one positive thing after the next, after the next, after the next. So,
love it. Well, thank you, Ricky, for coming down. It was a pleasure. You know, sometimes we do this show and it's like, how is it already time to wrap it up? You know, like how did that time go so fast? This is definitely one of those episodes. So thank you for coming down, just for being who you are. Thank you for the sourdough starter.
Yeah.
Bringing joy to my family.
Yeah.
To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Toxicology, like, follow, share. Check out the website, toxicologypod.com. Tell your friends, leave us a review, share us on social media, all that kind of stuff.
All of it.
And as we like to say here on Toxicology, there's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out. And we hope you find yours.